Hey, what's up good people? Welcome to another episode of Pwned, and in this episode we are going to be talking about the Firefly by Colonel Wasp. To start things off, a big shout out to Enoch is due because without Enoch I wouldn't have this piece to review and show you guys. Well, kind of like a review, more like a first impressions and just an overview of this thing, less of a review because I actually had time to spend with this guy like one day, but the reason is because I have to return this. This does not belong to me. It still belongs to Enoch. I'm going to return this to him and then I think he'll be shipping it off to someone else. I'm not so sure. Thank you to Enoch anyway, because without him, I wouldn't be able to try this out. Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably going to ask like, how can you get your hands on this? And all I can say is I only have the link to Monkee Mods. I think it's called a Taobao page. And I'll put that link in the description box down below. Because apart from that link, I don't really know any other links I can share with you guys. So please pardon me. And I'm trying out this different camera angle this time around. I've got a light on the side, two lights here shining at my face, and I don't know how the shadows will react and everything, and I don't know what the background will look like, but I'm just taking this video, recording it, and just hoping for the best. So I apologize if the quality overall is quite crappy. Okay, on to the blaster. You guys can see it is a shotgun styled blaster. I believe that everything here is actually very beautifully molded. It's got some aluminum barrels here, and this lower barrel here actually houses the shells that it fires. And so for a change, I decided I would show you guys a firing demonstration first, so you guys can see the action on this before really talking about anything else. So let's go. So the Firefly fires out from these kind of shells. It's just plastic molded shells that look quite cool, and if I'm not wrong, there are other colors apart from blue. I think I've seen red on the Monkee Mods store, but you will need these if you want to fire the blaster, and these I believe currently are proprietary. And when you look at this size now, you can tell that it fires Stephans. I've tried firing it with full-length darts and you could load one, but it very rarely fires full-length darts. I think I tried about maybe 20 times so far, and I've only successfully managed to fire once. Now, for the purpose of this firing demonstration, I will be firing off 4 darts, and I have 4 Stefan darts here, soft nipple tip Stefan darts, and loading the shells is really simple. Just shove it in. It's just that straightforward. Just use your pinky if you want to ram it all the way to the back. So I basically got 3 loaded. I will show you guys the last one in a little bit more detail. So we've got the shell, we've got the Stefan, just load it in and push it in all the way to the back. Right there. Now it's time to load the blaster up, and if you look down here where the mag well is, quote unquote the mag well, there's a little slot on the inside where you can push these shells in, like this. And it's really that simple, just load it this way. If you guys notice, I'm not really looking at it directly, I'm just seeing it from this angle up here. So make sure that you've got 4 of these. Actually it holds up to 5, but I'm doing 4 for a reason, and it goes in like that. And basically in the mag well, there's like 2 arms, like kind of 2 claws that I'm calling it, that's holding everything in place and preventing the shells from ejecting from the bottom. And now, just as I'm going to start the firing demonstration, I'm going to swap hands. You guys know that I'm actually left-handed, but because the shells all eject from the right side of the blaster, I felt that a firing demonstration in this orientation would be way better for you guys, so you can actually see the action. I mean, yeah, I could still do it with my left hand, but then I'll be holding it like this, and then essentially I'll be blocking the light, so I'm going to be doing it this way. So I'm going to be a little bit uncomfortable, so I hope that you guys don't mind, because it's going to be a bit awkward for me, you know, pumping this way versus pumping this way. I'm going to just perform a standard firing demonstration, and then you guys can see the action and the firing as well, and then later on we'll be talking about more details about this thing, okay? So here we go. This is going to be really awkward, so I apologize. Now that all 4 shells are out, you could still squeeze the trigger and just release the spring. So there isn't any locking mechanisms in place. So make sure that you don't accidentally squeeze the trigger with the pump pulled back. If not, it's going to slam everything forward. So just apply some pressure, squeeze the trigger, and then ease it down. So with the firing demonstration done and out of the way, let's talk about the aesthetics of the blaster. It features an orange and clear colorway, and this orange is kind of muted. It seems like a carrot orange. It's not bright, and it's got orange anodized aluminum as well. And it's got an aluminum priming bar that links the pump to the main system, and the main system here is quite intricate, and I apologize because I'm not able to disassemble everything. I don't want to, because I know this is going to be sent off to somewhere else, so I don't want to run the risk of accidentally ruining something inside, because it looks pretty intricate if you ask me. Then it's got what seems to be an anodized metal plunger tube as well, and this plunger tube looks to be of the same size as a long shot plunger tube, and it's got a pretty hefty spring. It does seem to pack a punch, and the performance right now that I'm getting is on par with a modded long shot, so it's pretty sweet, actually pretty darn sweet. Now at the back here, you actually have an end strike stock attachment, but this here, I gotta admit, it's a little bit wide. I have not found any attachments that could go on this because on the horizontal axis, this is a little bit too wide. I believe that the vertical axis is fine, it's just the horizontal axis. Now, I'm not gonna be shaving this down, and I'm also not intending to make any modifications to any stock attachments that I have because I'm not gonna be keeping this forever, you know what I mean? And I believe that Colonel Wasp is actually designing his own stock attachments. Now, I'm assuming that Colonel Wasp is a male, so that's why I'm addressing Colonel Wasp as a him. So I'm pretty sure that he has some upcoming designs. Maybe he has some out in the market. I'm not so sure, but I'm pretty sure his stuff will work on this blaster as well. Because if it doesn't, then it would suck, right? Next, on the top here, you actually have some Picatinny rails, but these seem to be a little bit wider than most of the attachments that I have. Now, the Picatinny attachments that I have are mainly 20mm Picatinny attachments, but this one seems a little bit wider. Maybe it's a 21mm, I'm not so sure, which is why I don't have any attachments up here to show you guys. So that's a little bit of a bummer. Moving down here to the pump grip, the pump grip is actually quite plain. You guys can see it is smooth on the sides, like completely flat and smooth, but it's got some ridges down on the bottom here and two more pronounced lips on the front and the back. However, I feel that this lip here is a little bit too shallow. I wish it was a little bit taller so that I had more real estate to lean my hand against, because like I said, on the sides it's really smooth. I feel like my thumb is slipping off the sides all the time, and I'm talking about my right hand being my main priming hand. So while it is really comfortable for me to grip, it's not as comfortable to prime. I really have to squeeze this pump grip so that I could get a bit more friction from all 5 of my fingers here, or 4 fingers and a thumb if you want to call it that. But yeah, just to do that. And like I said, because of the spring, the prime is quite tough, but it gets even tougher towards the back of the prime because you have to actuate this whole system. Now I'm gonna use my right hand because it's a little bit more natural, of course, but I apologize if it blocks the light. So you prime it this way, and then towards the end here is when you actually feel an even stronger resistance, and then when you pull it all the way back is when you actuate this whole system here, and the plunger rod also catches onto the catch plate here. So this is what happens. Even if I push it forward, I'm going to prime it again so I can actuate it one more time. When you reach this part, you feel a resistance, then you have to actuate this whole system again, like that. So it's quite obvious when I don't really jam it all the way back really fast. If you do so, then it's gonna be quite smooth, or at least rather smooth looking. Onto the trigger. The trigger is really smooth though, really smooth. And there's a little click at the back, see? Almost like a hairpin pull. So right here is when you click to fire the dart. And that is something that I really enjoy, and I wanna show it to you guys again. Check it out. Just watch the trigger pull. I really like that. It just kind of snaps. You actually feel it moving back till the pressure point, and then it just snaps, and I really enjoy that action there. And now going back to the plunger tube, since we were talking about it, you actually see the shell being raised at certain portions to house the plunger tube. It reminds me of how I used to perform all the expanded plunger tube mods on retaliators. So I would cut a window out in the shell so that the plunger tube could stick out a little bit. So this is kind of like that. Not sure if this was a conscious decision made by Colonel Wasp, or is it because he had to make adjustments as an afterthought when he used the plunger tube of this size. I'm not so sure, but it definitely looks quite cool, honestly. Moving down here to the grip next, I like the texturing on the grip, but I want to say that I've got medium-sized Asian hands, and this grip fits my hand almost perfectly. So those of you with larger hands, I think this grip might be just borderline okay, or maybe a tad bit too small. Adding on to that, the texturing done on the grip here is really nice. It's some kind of a stone ostrich skin kind of finish. I want to say ostrich skin, or maybe manta ray skin, I'm not so sure, but it's got this textured motif here that's really nice. And I'm comparing this to the swordfish by Worker, because Worker's swordfish had some really uncomfortable scale designs for the grip, but this here is really comfortable. Of course, it's not as grippy as if you were to put some kind of a rubber grip here, but this actually serves its purpose pretty darn well. And also, there's a lot of real estate here, a lot of space for your finger to go in at the trigger, so you don't have to worry about trying to squeeze the edge of the finger to pull the trigger. This is really comfortable. Fit 2 fingers in there. So yeah, last but not least, there is a cool Colonel Wasp logo. I'm gonna try to kind of tilt it up and down so that hopefully it could be caught on camera. But yeah, it's a Colonel Wasp badge logo, and I think that's actually pretty cool. It is, however, only done on one side. It's just plain and flat on the other. Maybe because it's saving on cost, I don't know. But if it was done on both sides, I think it would look absolutely awesome. Now, the one thing that is really jarring in terms of aesthetics is the fact that this bar here is sticking out like that. It's silver in color, or maybe it's raw in color. I wish that it was anodized to be the same color as this, then it would match a lot better. And also, although flathead Phillips screws are being used here, they do protrude out a little bit. And this bar is the only part of the blaster with screws that kind of stick out like that. So although it's not sharp, I'm gonna say that it's not sharp because I like this finishing here. I don't know what finish this is done in. It's really, really shiny. I think there's some kind of a coating here. But for that to be sticking out might be a little bit disturbing for some of you. For me, it's okay. It just seems a bit weird that it's sticking out like that. But I am, however, glad that they use silver screws to match with this silver bar here and not stick with the black colored screws as featured on the rest of the blaster. Now let's talk about the loading and ejecting system of this blaster. Well, I am just going to be speculating on how it works. But basically, there is a slot here you guys saw earlier, but there is a stopper and a spring. And that is why there is a hole down here to prevent any vacuum from this chamber here where it holds all of your shells. So you just grab a shell and push it in. So the shell is being held in, like I mentioned, by some pieces of plastic. Left, right, and bottom, there is a tab right there, and this prevents it from coming all the way out. Now, you could load a total of 5 shells, but when you get to 5 shells, the spring starts to compress even more, and then the spring load would be a little bit stronger. So there usually is a high chance that you would accidentally load 2 shells instead of 1 when you have 5 in here. So that is what I was trying to avoid. Therefore, the firing demonstration was only with 4 shells. So I'm gonna try to replicate that for you guys. That's shell number 3, number 4, and finally shell number 5. It sits in there like that. And let's see if it happens this time, okay? No, the shell just flew out because the spring tension is that strong. So yeah, try not to jam 5 shells in there. Let me just show it to you guys again. I'll do the same exact action, hopefully at the same speed, and I'll prove it to you that shell number 4 will not fly out the same way that shell number 5 did. See, it's sitting right there, and it will just load in. And I'm gonna be taking it out because we don't have a dart in there. I don't want to dry fire this thing. Alright, I've loaded it up back to 4 shells, and I'm gonna be trying to show you guys how this thing kind of flicks shells out. So when you first prime it, this bar here just goes down, and when the bar goes down, these 2 stoppers will move beyond that area here, letting the shell come up, and then it would kind of ramp upwards like that. Let's see if I can get a slow motion shot of that. So this is what it looks like. So the shell drops out, and this bar is ready to push it up once you move the pump grip back to the front. And then this chambering piece here effectively chambers the whole shell into the barrel here. Now I'm going to pull this back so that we could kind of see this kind of flicking out. When you pull this back, it would automatically eject the shell. Check it out. So it kind of just slips out like that. And I believe that is done with the tab on the other side of the blaster. This tab is only on one side. So when you pull it back, essentially this tab moves upwards and kind of pushes that shell from the front out, and then this tab over here on the outside that sticks out blocks the back of the shell, so it kind of slips out this way. And that's what I believe the system does. I'm not so sure because I haven't disassembled this, but I don't think I'm that far off. So just show it to you guys again. I'm gonna load another shell, right, chamber it, and then slowly push it up like that. So see how it kind of sticks out this way now? You saw that? Once I pulled it all the way back like that, it kind of just flew out. One more time. I'll do it slightly smoother this time. And I'm gonna go really slow this time. As slow as possible. That's cool, right? It's really, really cool. Now, when that happens, the shell actually spins, and it's a really cool looking spin. Now, just for the fun of it, I'm going to be actuating this all 4 shells in a row. The blaster is primed, so this is going to be really easy to pump, and hopefully I can kind of slow down the footage so that you guys can see it a little bit better in action. Okay, so now you've seen all the cool stuff about this blaster and all the pros about this thing. I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about some cons that I found or I felt. And while these may be a little bit nitpicky, they are still cons and I wanted to point them out to you guys. So I was talking about these arms here, and honestly speaking, the arms here on the side that actually hold all the shells in place, those are a little bit sharp. I think that they are done in such a way because, you know, tolerances are really tight, but it's kind of sharp. So sometimes you might scratch your finger when you're trying to load it in, especially when you're pulling your hand out after you've just loaded the shell. So it's quite sharp on the side, so be careful of that. And let me show you guys exactly how sharp it is. So you can see it for yourself, these here, pretty darn sharp. It's really easy to scratch yourself on and possibly even cut yourself against. The next con that I realized was that this barrel here, the main firing barrel, is actually loose. It's held in by friction with the use of a gasket here, and basically, see, it just comes out like that. So if you load in a dart with a little bit of a wider hit, for example, I think maybe some kind of a nipple tip dart or maybe an acu strike tip dart or something like that, or if the foam you're using is too wide for the barrel, then there is a possibility that after firing and it gets jammed, this barrel might come out, because that's what happened to me when I was trying to fire a full-length dart. This thing actually moved. Now this comes out like that, and this gasket here is actually just a loose piece. And once this thing comes loose, what happens is that your shells will not eject correctly. That's something that I realized after only adjusting all of this and making sure that everything sat correctly in place. Now with the barrel removed, I want to say that these edges here on the pump grip are also pretty darn sharp, so it's something you have to be careful about. Of course, when you have the barrel on, you're not going to scratch your finger against it like that, but just, you know, just beware and be careful of that. And the next thing I want to mention is something about this loading mechanism here, or this loading chamber here. There is a little plastic or rubber stopper at the end of the spring. I think inside is a spring with some kind of a rest, like a PVC ring or a plastic ring, and then a stopper is stuck onto that ring. Now this stopper actually fell out as I received it, and I realized that without the stopper, this whole chamber here wouldn't work correctly. So you have to make sure that the stopper is glued in place. Now I've gooped it in and I've been waiting for it to cure for about 24 hours, so it should be good now. But that also means that this area here is actually quite sensitive, especially when you're loading your shells. Like I mentioned, it is a spring in there, so the more shells you load, the higher load the spring will have at the end of the day. So how fast and how quick it will push your shells out really depends on how many shells you have in there. So as a general rule of thumb, this thing actually holds 5 shells, but I recommend nothing more than 4. You could of course load 1 into the main chamber first, and then having 4 in here will give you a total of 5 shots or 5 darts in total before having to reload again. The next thing is about the reloading. Now I've had some time with this, so I've had a little bit of practice already, but when you're loading the shell in here, you got to make sure that the shell sits as square or as flush as possible. Sometimes the shell might be a little bit off to the side, kind of like that, if you guys can see. Hopefully you can. And once it's off to the side, then this bar would not be able to drop down, and then you'll just be stuck at the priming stage. Like, you won't be able to pull it back all the way. And so just make sure that this is sitting flush, and make sure that the tab at the back right at the top is not touching the top lip of the shell. It's got to be just right behind the shell. That's one thing that you really have to take note of. And so far, those are the cons that I felt or I found about this blaster. On to the dart fit. Now you guys know I don't have a crony and I don't have vernier calipers. And this dart here is a blue foam dart, so I don't really know where I got this dart from. And I'm just going to be using this as a benchmark. Dart fit is actually not bad. It's a snug fit, not too tight, and it will not come out easily. Just now, when you're installing the barrel back, there are 2 ends of this. Install the end with the extra lip in towards the blaster and make sure that this gasket is sitting completely flush to this piece of plastic here before installing it back in place. And all you got to do is just align it at the bottom here and then just push it in, and just make sure that you apply some pressure so you'll know it is really snugly in place. And that's it. And one thing you guys have noticed so far is that I've never spoke about whether or not the shells jam up. They do sometimes, but that's because, you know, it depends on how you are holding the blaster. It's all gravity based. Like, if you hold the blaster downwards, then yeah, there's a very high chance that the shell is gonna jam. I gotta stop doing that because I have to keep picking up the shells. I only have 6. So just for fun, I'll be loading 2 shells into the blaster. and the blaster is actually primed. So I'm gonna show you guys, if I hold it downwards and I prime the blaster, there's a very high chance the shell will get stuck. It will just kind of flip in a funny way and end up totally vertical. See that? Now I can't close it. That's the main downside of this thing, and I've essentially successfully double loaded. Damn it! But apart from having it pointed downwards, when I had this blaster pointed in any other direction, loading and chambering was not a problem. So I'll try it upwards and show you guys. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry, guys. I guess I shouldn't be tilting it this way. Like that. See, that's not a problem at all. So I just wanted to illustrate that. This is, once again, the Firefly by Colonel Wasp. Now, once again, links are all in the description box down below. I will be linking to Monkee Mods' Taobao page. Also, apart from that, I don't actually have the pricing for this, so I have to apologize as well. But what I do know is that this might not be the only colorway offered or available. Also, I think that there are different variations of the pump grip. I may be wrong, so I apologize if I'm wrong, but I've seen other variations of the pump grip. And also, whenever you purchase one of this, you should be getting 6 shells as well. And of course, you could buy more shells, additional shells if you need more. This is actually a loaner from Enoch, so it does not belong to me. Once again, a huge shout out to Enoch. I'm going to have to return this to him, but I've enjoyed my experience with the Firefly so far. And it's making me look forward to what other cool products that Colonel Wasp is going to put out in the future. I mean, if you're a really avid fan of shotgun style blasters, this is going to be right up your alley, especially that ejecting function is really, really cool. The only thing I find cumbersome is the fact that you have to actually reload every single shell all the time and then reload every shell into this blaster. But the performance is pretty stellar. Like I said, it's comparable to a long shot, a modified long shot. So that's the plus side. Priming is not too much of an issue. You just gotta make sure that you get past the first prime and then actuate the bar like that before it actually goes this way. Kudos to Colonel Wasp for coming out with this. It's really, really cool and I'm liking it so far. So hopefully I gave you guys the pros and the cons about this. It's a really unique addition to the entire world of Nerf blasters, of foam dart blasters. This is actually pretty sweet. And that is it, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking all the way throughout and watching this video. I hope that you liked it, and if you do like it, I hope that you will give me a like on this video. And basically, we've come to the end of this episode, so I will catch all of you in the next episode of Pwned, whenever that will be. I will be talking about my experience at Z-Town Asia, and it's taking a long time because editing is pretty slow. I actually spoke quite a lot about it. I've got like an hour and a half worth of footage, so I do apologize. I know it's going to be a long video when it's done. Well, if you guys are interested in listening to what I have to say about it, then stay tuned for that. But if not, then thanks for watching, I guess. Drills pay the bills and teamwork makes the dream work. Peace.